Morning, everyone. Welcome to VMware's Lead session. My name is Dave Shanley, and I'm the lead engineer of the Evo Rail platform. Today, I'm going to give you myself and two of the other engineers on the team, Jehad and Wit, and be giving you a full overview of exactly how we built the platform, what it does, some of the technology that we use behind it, and how we built the product, how it came to be in existence. Hope everyone's feeling nice and sprightly this morning. It's the last day. I know I'm not. So, sorry, this is some legal rubbish. So, SDDC, this is the message we've been preaching. Software-defined data center is the future of IT. Virtualized compute, network storage, and management. It's a very businessy message, but it does have some weight, and it's very valid. So, how does Evo Rail fit into it, and what is Evo Rail? So, can I just get a show of hands? Has anyone heard of the Evo Rail? Great. Excellent. Does everyone know what it is? Kinda. Great. Okay. So, Evo Rail. Evo Rail is VMware's first, well, let me rephrase that. It's the world's first 100% VMware-powered, hyper-converged infrastructure appliance. That means we've got compute, network, and storage all in one single unit. You don't need to have a separate storage. vSAN gave us that last building block to be able to create this product. And there isn't another product around there in the world that is 100% VMware powered. That's from the very lowest level to the very highest level, 100% VMware software. It's a single SKU. For procurement, this means, real simple, you've got one fee. When you buy this appliance, you pay one cost. And you've also got one number for support as well. So there's no having to worry about balancing multiple licenses, worrying about different hardware components, networking, et cetera, one fee, one appliance, one number. So the real kind of premise is what we wanted to create was the idea of a DVR of the data center, a TiVo of the data center, something you can literally just rail in. See what we did there? Bad joke, sorry. Cable it up, so you put, so each host has two NICs, two 10 gig NICs. You cable it up to a top of rack switch, you power it on, and you are ready to start deploying VMs in 15 minutes with some really simple configuration options. So again, the idea is simplicity. What we wanted to do was create an experience that would allow anyone with any level of IT experience to be able to deploy this appliance. As long as you know how to put in an IP address and what a VLAN is and how to type a password, you can deploy the Evo Rail. You don't need to know anything about VMware or virtualization to be able to do this. The Evo Rail engine does all of the heavy lifting that normally a professional services person would do. That's setting up ESX, configuring networking, installing VC, setting the licenses up, connecting it all together, creating clusters, et cetera. This does it all for you. You don't have to worry about any of that. And then we've also gone the next step and created a real simple management engine. This allows you to scale up the Evo Rail up to 4 appliances without any configuration whatsoever, as well as deploy VMs with a few clicks. And again, no real knowledge of how VMs work or what they are. You don't have to know anything about it. So let's kind of take a step back and talk about where hyper-converged infrastructure came from. You've probably all seen this slide 1,000 times. I'm just going to run through it really quickly. We started out with build your own. This is where you procure all your hardware yourself. You get all the components, you put them in a box, you install all the software components, ESX, VC, and you configure all yourself, and you've got a complete custom solution. Now, that's obviously the ideal for some people because, we want that's the ultimate control, right? But it takes a while to procure all this stuff, and it's not so easy to get set up, and things go wrong, and you get the settings wrong, and, you've got a big, long process. And this can take, anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 months. The next is converged infrastructure. So this is something like a vBlock from VCE. It's a great big rack, ready to go, all the hardware components already installed, and you get a team of professionals come out, and you spend 6 months configuring it, and these things can cost anywhere up to $2 million. Great solution if you want to literally rack in a big rack, you have everything you need, but again, it's really expensive, and it's not suitable for the smaller end of the market or for remote offices, things like that. And then you have hyper-converged infrastructure. So this is, as I said earlier, it's everything in one box, network, compute, and storage. That's all you need and you're ready to go. So, Evo Rail, why is it awesome? One of the reasons is because it's built on trusted technology. That's ESXi, vCenter Server, Virtual SAN, Log Insight, and of course the Evo Rail engine. All 100% VMware software. It's a prescribed 2U 4-node platform. That means there's 4 nodes inside the appliance. And we don't actually sell this product. You can only get it from a QEP. That means a qualified Evo Rail partner. So we provide them with a build recipe for the hardware, and we give them the software bundle, and then they package it all up and put their additional services on, and that's where you procure it from. Another great feature of this is its automated scale-out. So once you have an Evo Rail appliance installed, you can rail in another one, power it on. Obviously, you've got to cable up to the top rack switch first. Once it's powered on, the existing appliance or the existing cluster of appliances will recognize the new one that you have just turned on and give you the option. Do you want to add it to the cluster or leave it as standalone? If you add it to the cluster, within 6 minutes, you've just added it in, automated, and all the resources you need are right there and ready to go. The cluster's just expanded without you having to do anything. And this is really the key point here. Time to value the first VM in as little as 15 minutes. Now, if you've been down to the hands-on labs, you may have seen the Evo Rail challenge. And we've had people all throughout the conference testing their skills and putting their speed to the test. And we've actually had people deploying this in, what's the time, 16 minutes, 17 seconds is the fastest one, I believe, so far. And that's with no knowledge of the product and deploying VMs as well. So that's from start to finish. You have a completely unconfigured appliance to your first VM deployed, 16 minutes. So if you feel lucky, you can go and try and break that yourselves down in the hands-on labs, or you can take the lab yourself. There's an Evo Rail lab as well. Another great feature, and this is something that a lot of people have been asking for, is non-disruptive patching and upgrading. So in our UI, you have the option to upload a new version of VC, whether it be a patch or a full version, same with ESX and the Evo Rail platform. It's simple. Upload, click upgrade, you're done. There's nothing else to it. And the reason why that we can do this non-disruptive and patching upgrading is because we own the environment. That means that we can control where the VMs go, we can control what the hosts do, we have complete control over it. So we do a whole load of orchestration in the background with vMotion, putting hosts into maintenance mode, so your VMs do not go down. So the primary use cases of Evo Rail: VDI, remote office, branch office, and virtual private cloud. So how does a product like this come into existence? How does something like this appear in the company? Does all the executives get together and say, we're going to build a new product? Or does it come from a more grassroots background? I'm going to explain how we did that. So let's go back to March 2013. Mornay van der Walt, VP of Emerging Solutions and my boss, finally realized that we had all the components that we needed to create this, with vSAN becoming on the horizon. And he said, you know what? The time is now. The time is right. So he went to one of our executive vice presidents and looking for sponsorship and said, look, we should try this out. We should build a prototype. And he said, sounds interesting, let's do it. So what happened? 10 months, it was myself and Mornay working on this. These are some of the early specification, the process flows, the information flows, some of the architecture diagrams that I came up with. This is all nonsense now because it's changed and iterated 1,000 times. I was building the UIs, building the platforms, trying to get the idea solidified. Could we automate the install process? Could we automate the configuration process? Turns out we could. So you see here the name Marvin. Has anyone heard of Marvin? Great. So for those who haven't heard of it, Marvin is actually the original code name for the project, and it stood for Modular, Automated, Rackable, Virtual Infrastructure Node. It was a name and an acronym in itself, and of course that wasn't something that we could go to market with, but it was a lot of fun in the beginning. We had originally had Marvin the paranoid android as our mascot. And you can see these are some of the early designs. I know they don't look very good, but I'm not the greatest designer in the world. But you can, if you've done the lab or you've seen the product, you'll see this is not a million miles away from where we are today. But it obviously looks very different. And some of these prototypes, it was literally 10 months of solid iterating and failing. Failing fast, trying again. Scrap it, scrap it, scrap it. Not right. Let's do it again. And you can see some of these are awful. I mean, they're terrible. But it was a way for us to find out what is the right way to do it. Let's get it wrong first. So we kept iterating, and it started to take shape. And you also know, if you look on the logo on the top right, you can see it's moved from Marvin the paranoid android, which we couldn't ship with, obviously, to something that's a little more familiar with, if you may have seen the robot logo that we have. This was actually the cockroach phase, mainly because it looks like a cockroach. This is, as you can see, more evolution of the UI. This is part of the management system, right? So it doesn't look anything like this today, and I apologize, my colors look like somebody spilt a bag of Skittles all over it. Not very good with colors, so I'm glad that we had Jehad to help out, make it look good. But again, you can see how it was starting to evolve. So let's now talk about the architecture, right? So this may or may not be interesting to some of you. We're going to talk about some of the technologies that we built and the architecture of the application and the platform. So, core technology for the UI, HTML5. We don't have any Flex or Flash, CSS3, and JavaScript. I apologize, the T has dropped down a line because we created this with a different font and it doesn't quite work. So, on the back-end side, on the actual the application framework, it's Java. Now, Java is one of the main technologies that we use at VMware simply because it's so versatile. We also built that on top of the Spring platform, which again is a lot of other VMware technologies is built on Spring. Spring is pretty much the de facto enterprise platform for developing applications. Now, we also used Python. This was for Loudmouth, which Wit is going to give you a bit of a demonstration on, well, sorry, not a demonstration, a bit of a talk through in a few minutes. Really cool stuff. And a lot of other bits and pieces, like some of the automation scripts are done in Python, particularly because ESX doesn't support Java. It doesn't come with a JVM. So we had to build a hybrid system. And Bash as well. Lots and lots of Bash. Lots and lots of scripts, shell scripts. On the UI side, the core UI is built or is based on Backbone. Backbone is a really, really lightweight MVVM UI framework. And of course, jQuery. This is the industry standard DOM manipulation framework as well. And WebSockets. Now, WebSockets, it's something that we couldn't have done 4 or 5 years ago because it wasn't mature enough. WebSocket support for browsers has only really become standardized in the last 2 years, particularly with IE. So now we have the ability to create an event-driven UI. So there's no refresh delays, there's no having to reload the page to get the latest details. It is pinged straight to every single client at the same time. Everyone has the same experience, and everyone has real-time information on what's happening in the UI. Browser support. Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Opera, Safari, works on an iPad, works on a browser, pretty much any platform. We wanted to create a UI and an experience that was standardized, universal, no matter where you accessed it from. And one of the philosophies that we took was we need to strip away heavyweight features to make way for simple VM and appliance management. So it's not about cramming as many features into the product as possible. It's getting one thing right. Let's forget everything, for everything we've done in the past. Let's take this back to square one and do it right. We've had challenges in the past with some of our experiences in our UIs because these are some really complicated technologies, and they pack a huge amount of features into a UI or into a platform. And sometimes it's a bit too much, right? You don't need that level of power. And this entire product is built on simplicity. Another thing is it's been built from the ground up. Now, this wasn't a product that we bought. We didn't acquire another company. We built this from the ground up, from scratch. This is 100% homegrown VMware technology. And we use a blend of proprietary open source tech and VMware tech. So there are some private APIs that we use for certain features. That's our prerogative because we own it. But the rest of it is GA available code, GA APIs. This platform is something that you could build yourselves if you were determined enough. Minimal moving parts as well. VMware is not the first to market with HCIAs. There are some great products out there already that offer this exact same kind of experience, but there isn't one that's 100% VMware based. And what we wanted to do was make sure that when we built this, it was as lightweight and as clean as possible. So there is no additional moving parts. There are no service VMs running in the background. You don't have to worry about an additional file distribution service. Because we use vSAN, it goes straight through the hypervisor. So we don't have to worry about maintaining separate service VMs. And again, Evo Rail is integrated directly into vSphere's core stack. So this isn't something we've just stuck on the side. This is directly integrated onto the VCSA, which is the vCenter Server Appliance. So speaking of, I'm going to give you a quick tour of what it looks like. So in the appliance, there's 4 hosts, 4 ESXi hosts, I should say. Each of those hosts has 2 10-gig NICs. The number of disks vary from vendor to vendor, from QEP to QEP, but on this particular one, it's based on an Intel white box, and it comes with 3 magnetic disks and an SSD. That's a requirement of vSAN. And it also has a different boot device. So ESX does not boot off of vSAN. That would be a nightmare. Instead, it boots off of a SATA DOM or another hard disk. And that's kind of a protected realm where we keep a lot of our goodies in there. So that's not writable or readable storage. You could use it, but we don't support it. And on one of the hosts lives the VCSA, and this is the vCenter Server Appliance. And you might see this loudmouth daemon everywhere, and it's going to make a lot more sense in a minute. But loudmouth is a core element of our zero-conf strategy. And of course, you've got the Evo Rail engine that sits directly on the VCSA. This isn't a separate application. It's not a separate VM. It's wired directly into vCenter. And there's 2 power supplies as well. And they all go up to a 10-gig top-of-rack switch. So this is what the actual application looks like. As you can see, we've got our vCenter server, or VPX, if anyone's familiar with the VCSA. And that includes things like SSO, inventory service, the web client, and lookup service. And you can see the Evo Rail engine just sits nicely between the rest of our products. Again, it's integrated, it's not stuck on. We have our loudmouth daemon, and we have our engine services. This is all of our core logic, all of our configuration rules, our validation, our network validation, all of our authentication systems. It's where we put all of our brains. And then on top of that sits a RESTful API. Now, currently, that API is just geared to the UI. It's designed to deliver content to the UI and that UI only. But you could use it if you wanted to by a third-party RESTful client. So what we're doing in the future is we're going to standardize the API and make it publicly available. But stay tuned on that. It's still to come. And that means that you can build your own applications on top of it. But the primary reason is to allow our QEPs to integrate their secret sauce and their extra value into the UI and the experience. On top of the API lives our configuration and management UIs. And we have an Atmosphere implementation for WebSockets. Now, that's probably going to change. We're going to drop down to Spring to handle that. But this is where we stand today. And of course, it sits on the ESX. Now, the VCSA can float between any one of the nodes. It doesn't have to live on any particular node, or host, sorry. vMotion and DRS will handle that for you. So now I've given you an overview of some of the tech and what it looks like. Let's talk about ZeroConf. So I'm going to hand over to Wit now, and he's going to give you a guided tour through some of this really cool technology.
Hello. All right. Cool. So thanks, Dave, for the introduction. Like he mentioned, Loudmouth and ZeroConf are a pretty core technology of how we accomplish much of how we perform our automated configuration and make it really simple within Evo Rail. Oh, well, first, you have a lovely picture of Dave's dog. I usually forget its name. It's Malcolm? Magnum? Magnum. There we go. Thanks. Anyways, now we're on to ZeroConf and what it is. So ZeroConf, much of you probably have experienced it before. It's implemented as Avahi on Linux or known as Bonjour on Mac, on Mac OS X. Now what this does is largely what you see when you turn on your computer, you power it on, and you're trying to add a printer. It automatically discovers these printers. That's an implementation of ZeroConf, and that's ZeroConf being used. Also on how on iTunes, you can share files, share your music, and it's automatically discovered by other iTunes, as well as AirDrop, Time Capsule, and various other Apple technologies. So ZeroConf is an implementation of two fundamental technologies. One is called MDNS, Multicast DNS. The other is called DNS-SD, DNS Service Discovery. Now MDNS is fairly self-descriptive. It basically means that you can send and receive multicast or DNS packets on a multicast address. It means anyone can receive and send, and everyone will hear about these packets. DNS-SD is DNS Service Discovery again. This basically means you can register services, again, like printers, iTunes shares, AirDrop, over the DNS packet, over this protocol. These two combined allow us to perform our auto-discovery. Loudmouth. Loudmouth is what we call our internal implementation of ZeroConf. Now the way this works is about 2 years ago, we had an internal conference where we tried to prototype some of this. We started off with a basic implementation. Our idea was to basically start off trying to auto-discover ESXi hosts, auto-discover your VC, auto-discover syslog services, and other various entities like this, such that configuration would just be simple. The user doesn't need to worry about typing in an IP address, a port number, an address, or any such things like that. It would be discovered and seamlessly integrated. Our initial prototyping started off with MDNS Responder. This is an open source implementation of Bonjour. It's freely available on the web. We pulled it down. We tried to get it to compile against both our ESX and our VCSA, but we encountered various difficulties with such dependencies. So we moved on to something a little bit simpler, Python. Now Python may not have been the greatest language to implement such a low-level service, but it did provide us the quick prototyping and iteration that we could get in order to deliver this on time. And it's all implemented from the ground up. We followed the spec to the T, and it's compatible with other ZeroConf technologies such as Avahi and again Bonjour. Integration. How does this integrate into our current technologies? With integration to ESX and the VC, we're now allowed to discover other various nodes that belong to an appliance or other appliances. To do this, we had to have some discussion with our QEPs, our qualified Evo Rail partners. Through this, we were able to embed a certain piece of information to the BIOS and expose this with Loudmouth. This exposure allows us to tag each individual node and identify them as part of a particular appliance. With Loudmouth, we can then discover, with no networking configuration at all, with basically IPv6 link local addressing, we discover all of these nodes that belong to your appliance, and we give you this seamless integration and discovery and configuration of your Evo Rail appliance. Additionally, like Dave mentioned, we can also do appliance add, up to 4 appliances. What happens then is, as you plug in and power on your additional appliance, Loudmouth starts to broadcast this. The VC discovers these messages and says, hey, I now have a new appliance available. What can I do with this? I go ahead, the UI then gives you a nice little dialogue. It pops up, says add appliance, and again, within 6 minutes, you've expanded your storage, your cluster, and your cluster. So while all this is great as a fundamental baseline in our backend, and it gives us this seamlessness and this automation, it doesn't really do much for the user unless it's exposed very well. Jehad will now explain to you how we expose this and make it a seamless experience for the user.
Thanks. So my name is Jehad. I run the user experience and UI for Evo Rail. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we thought about building the Evo Rail experience. First of all, we thought about it as a minimum viable product. What that really meant to us is building an end-to-end user experience. Everything you use in Evo Rail, if you tried the hands-on labs or the challenge, is every feature in Evo Rail or the product itself works end-to-end, from start to finish. What that really means, in other words, is that we will cut features but not corners. Evo Rail has two parts, the configuration UI and management UI. And in general, in multiple products you've probably used, installation, configuration, and even deployment UIs are usually ignored in products. They're not worth the investment. It's a one-time use for users. For us, it was a crucial part of what we built. We spent months and months prototyping on how it should look like and what the user experience should look like. It's very easy to just run through it, provide the basic information that's needed for us to set up your appliance, and from there you're good to go. It starts building the appliance itself. Even while it's building, we try to provide the most pretty UI to look at. Once done, we give you this screen that we call the Hooray screen, which is basically you're done, you're ready to go, and just a quick link to go into management. In management, we followed the same thing. Again, we spent a lot of time on making sure that, just to put it out there, we're not replicating the web client. That's not the goal. We're not taking away the web client. That's not the goal either. We actually put a link to the web client at the top right corner, so in case you want more advanced settings to do or configurations to do with storage and networking. Our goal was to focus on what Evo Rail is best at, which is creating VMs, managing VMs, doing patching and upgrading, a few configuration options. So this is the management screen. You land on VM management. We built something we call the VM card. So each one of those is a VM card that has few operations that you can do at the bottom. Once you click on it, it gives you a little bit more operations. It gives you name, IP address, state, and things like that. Once you move on to health, health is your central location for looking at the health of the appliance, health of the services underneath. It gives you a quick overview of how the appliance is doing. With designing health, we actually started with the basic. We started with CPU, memory, and storage, and then we sent it to our early access program customers. And we started collecting feedback. The reason we did it this way is, in general, dashboards are hard to build. You can put as much information as you want in the dashboard, but it becomes on the customer to sort through what actually matters and what doesn't. So we try to provide, especially on the page that you look at first, what's the most important thing to see. But even when you look in depth at the nodes themselves, you're still looking at a very, or we try to provide you first with a very overview of is it doing well, and if not, what's wrong? Lastly, configuration. This is just to configure the basic services, things like licensing, log collection, choose your language while you're using Evo Rail. But the most exciting thing about this page is, if you look at the top right corner, it's the patching and upgrading. So to upgrade VC, ESXi, or Evo Rail itself, all you need to do is upload a bundle. It will give you an on and off for, whether you want to update ESXi only, VC only, etc. You click go and it's just done. So the response to Evo Rail itself has been very positive, but the response to the UI has been overwhelmingly positive as well. We get things, I don't know, if your tweet shows up, raise your hand. This is probably the slickest thing I have ever seen in IT. Things like people trying it in hands-on lab or hang space and actually loving the experience itself. This is my favorite. Steve Jobs would be pleased. And my 11-year-old can do it. This is how simple it is. But the one that highlights this all, brings it together, is what JP Morgan said, which is this could be the iPhone moment for VMware. It's the experience of just getting one device, powering it on, and you're good to go. This is basically the user experience. I'm going to hand it back to Dave to give you a little bit more information about what's next.
Thanks, Jehad. So, can you hear me? Good. So now you've had a walkthrough of ZeroConf and Loudmouth. Again, I just want to take one moment and just run back by that one more time, because these hosts come from the factory completely unconfigured. They don't have an IP address. There's no DHCP. But we can still locate them and configure them using zeroconf. It's pretty cool. So now, let's talk about what's next. So as Jehad mentioned, we had, I think it's still going on actually, an EAP program. That's an early access program. And we work with some of our customers to figure out, are we getting this right? What else should we change? What else should we add? What should we take away? And after many conversations and backwards and forwards, people were saying, yeah, this is great, I love it, but I need something else to make it work for me. I need one more thing to make it great, brilliant, perfect. And then working with our QEPs, they also said, yeah, we love it, but we want to put this on it, and we can't integrate it yet. So one of the biggest questions we had from our EAP customers is, how can I see and monitor all of my appliances and clusters with a single pane of glass? This is the holy grail of robo management, right? So we've got all these different appliances all over the place. Let's imagine that you're an oil company. You've got 55 oil rigs, and on each oil rig you've got maybe 5 or 6 appliances. Some are clustered, some are not. How do you see all those, right? Now, these are individual VCs. Each cluster has its own VC. These are not giant federated systems, right? This is an individual universe, so to speak. How do you see all of it at one time? How can I monitor it? How can I see my hardware? How can I see the health? How can I do mass distribution? How can I upgrade all of my appliances at once? I've got 500 of them all over the place. I don't have to individually go to each appliance and upgrade it. So we listened, and we're working on it. But I can't give a definite time when we're releasing it, but it's something that we are definitely working on. So this is a question that we got from our QEPs and some customers as well. How can we integrate our tools and services into our own Evo Rail offering? This is the holy grail for a QEP. Evo Rail as a vanilla platform, and then they spice it up with their own juicy goodness. Hooking into the UI, hooking into our services, hooking into our logic, and creating a Evo Rail-like experience with their own products. This is something, again, we heard it, we're working on it, stay tuned. And this is another big question, right? So the greenfield, lovely, easy. You don't have any existing infrastructure, you're putting in a new appliance, you've got a brand new environment to start deploying from. Great, but what about when I've already got a VC? I've already got 2 VCs. I've already got existing infrastructure, or brownfield, as we like to call it. I don't know who came up with that term. Sounds kind of strange, versus greenfield. But it's how can I take this appliance model and apply it to my existing infrastructure? So this is a trickier question because it kind of breaks the appliance model. You wouldn't necessarily integrate an appliance into existing infrastructure. But that being said, again, it's something that we're very aware of, and it's something that we are working towards to create a solution. So that's it, really. We're a little early, but actually, before we go to questions, there is a survey. So if you do like what you hear today, spend just a minute or two just giving us a rating, and I'll be very appreciative. But that being said, no. There we go, back. Questions? Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir, you were first.
What options are available in terms of licensing against VMware as features such as HA and DRS?
Okay, so the question is, what are the licensing options against things like HA and DRS? So Evo Rail comes with vCenter Server Enterprise Plus. So HA and DRS are included automatically, and it's configured for you out of the box. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Can you mix and match brands?
So, can you mix and match? The question is, can you mix and match brands? The technical answer is yes. The realistic answer is no, because when you start coming to having things like firmware updates, you're no longer just updating one manufacturer's firmware, you're updating multiple firmware updates, right? And that gets very messy, very, very quick. So whilst we don't restrict it, and there's no technical reason why you couldn't, it's actually something we've never seen in the field. You wouldn't have an EMC and a Dell box in the same cluster. You normally wouldn't have those multiple vendors in the same place anyway. Yes, sir?
Is VCD embedded within it, or is that the rack product only?
No, there's no VC. So the software bundle is vCenter Server Enterprise Plus. It comes bundled with Log Insight, as well as the Evo Rail engine, and that includes vSAN and all the Enterprise Plus features. But VCD is not something that we've integrated into this particular platform. Yes, sir.
How do you integrate that then for ECU? EUC, sorry.
So what VCD? So this is just this is a vanilla vSphere stack. So you can install VCD on the appliance yourself if you've already got a license. There's nothing stopping you from installing SRM or VDP or VDPA. This is not. We don't break VC. You can install any existing product into VC or your existing plugins, third-party apps, things like that. Any storage tools. It's just like a regular vSphere, but it's the configuration and setup that's the Evo Rail management and the automated scaling. Yes, sir.
What about hardware and software support? Do you have a separate SKU or I can use
No, it's one SKU. So the hardware is predefined. When you buy it from the manufacturer, it's all in one. The cost includes everything. You can't customize the hardware. It's very prescriptive. So you don't have to worry about buying separate licenses and separate hardware purchases. It's literally like buying a TiVo box from Best Buy. One SKU. Yes, sir.
What about the network? You mentioned that there's a top-of-rack switch, but is NSX?
No. This is core vSphere networking. So again, the whole point of this, we built this product in 8 months. So we had to make sure that we cut everything down to do just the minimal viable product. Just get it right and get it working out of the box. NSX is a huge machine. It has a lot of moving parts and it requires a lot of configuration. So we are working with NSX. We are working with those guys. We actually sit right next to them in Palo Alto. So we are working on it. It's coming, but for version 1, the current version that we have, it's just core vSphere networking. Yes, sir.
Some organisations have problems running appliances, as in the vCenter app. Will there be an option to run it on their own OS, their own VM, so they can patch it to their own standard?
No. Evo Rail does not come as a separate software bundle. You can't buy it separately. You can't run it on your own hardware. You can't
Sorry, I don't mean hardware. I meant the vCenter server. You said was a vApp.
Yeah, it's a VCSA. It's a virtual appliance. Yeah.
Would there be an option to run that on their own OS version rather than on the appliance?
No. It's because of the way that we package everything together, we have to control the environment. So our software it's GA code or public available code, but the bundling process means that we need to own it. So it can only be done from the appliance. You couldn't run your own OS on it. No. Anybody else? Oh, yes,
Hello.
sir. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I've seen appliance with just one switches on the top, and is it a single point of failure in my mind?
Sorry, I can't hear you. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sorry?
I can't hear you. It's echoing all over the place. I couldn't hear the question.
Okay. So I've seen appliance with just one switch on the top.
Yes.
This is clearly a single point of failure. Is something that you can change, or it's built in this way and nothing can be changed? So
the question, I think everyone heard the question, but so the single top-of-rack switch, it doesn't necessarily mean to be a single switch. You can stick one NIC into one switch and the other. You just need to make sure that when your switches are configured that they allow IGMP snooping and querying, so vSAN can communicate across the two switches, as well as our multicast network for ZeroConf will work as well. But you can have more than one switch. It's not just one switch as a requirement. You just need to have a switch to be able to use it, but you can use multiple switches.
Thank you. Another question. You buy one node of the appliance from one of your trusted vendor, and late after, the vendor have a firmware upgrade. How can this be solved? Who have to solve this kind of
The vendor. So
issue?
the vendor is responsible for all the support and the maintenance and upgrades and patches and new features. They will be delivering the upgrades to you. They will be supporting those upgrades. Again, VMware doesn't sell this product. This is a recipe and a software bundle that we deliver to the QEPs, and they're then responsible. VMware is only responsible for level 4 support. So when this all blows up and they can't fix it, then we step in. But otherwise, it's direct to the vendor. Yes, sir.
So one question, what happens if the boot device of an appliance fails? How is it the image recovered and the node brought back to the appliance?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I think we had two questions at once.
Pardon?
So could you repeat the question? Because there was two questions at once.
What happens if the boot device of one node fails? How is the image recovered and brought back into the appliance?
So if the boot device fails, then again, it's another service request that have to go. So we use a SATA DOM on some appliances. Some use a disk. It depends on the vendor. And because that varies, it's the vendor's responsibility to service. So you call them and say, my boot device has failed, my node has gone down. You won't necessarily lose any of your data because we have our N+1 implementation with vSAN. So as long as we have 3 nodes running on the appliance, your data's safe. They'll come out, replace the disks, and sort it out for you. But they are responsible, and if VMware it's not something that VMware can deal with. Yes, sir.
On the networking front, is there any plans, or would it be down to the QEPs to put potentially switches actually in the? Would it be have potential to put switches within the chassis to avoid having to have the top rack switches?
So ideally, yes. But so when we started working on this product, when we started getting the hardware in, last year, and we started looking, we think, where's the shared backplane? This is hyper-converged. Why are we having to cable up to a top rack switch? The answer is that there's no room in the appliance to stick a switch, right? Right now, anyway, that would be the ideal situation because it will make our life a lot easier from a technical point of view. But again, it's something that our QEPs are going to have to deliver based on customer demand. And when that does happen, it's great because all the cables are gone and you've got an appliance model.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Do you definitely need to scale with 4 nodes, or is it possible to have just one server?
No. You can't take bits apart. You can't just have one node running. So vSAN requires a minimum of 3. Right? So you couldn't just run it on one.
No, I mean in terms of scaling, so install first 4 and then scale with one node, or not one node, one server.
Yes, yeah, you can just have one appliance, absolutely, yeah. So the minimum footprint is one appliance, right? And you can have up to 4, which is 16 hosts. Now we'll also be scaling that up in the future because vSAN's limit is 32 hosts, as you may or not know. So that's 8 appliances. And when you start getting to 8 appliances, you're kind of filling up a rack. That's 16U. So what we want to make sure is that we stay true to our vision of having a small Lego building block, the building block of the SDDC. When we start getting into racks and racks and racks, that's where our sister product, Evo Rail, comes in, and that's coming out in the next year or so. It's still a tech preview at the moment, though.
It's good to have vSAN integration. At the same time, what if we need external SANs as well?
So you can connect up an NFS mount without any problem whatsoever. You wouldn't necessarily use a fiber because it comes in 2 flavors. There's a copper or fiber for your networking, right? So you could easily mount another data store of NFS, no problem. You just have a separate.
NFS, no problem.
Not really, no. At the moment, no. Crawl, walk, run. We'll get there.
Yes, you say?
Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, here.
Yes.
You say that we can install anything on the machine. Can we use it as a block for a vCloud infrastructure?
Absolutely. You can consume this.
What happens with the cloud, the agent, when you do the upgrade?
So what I believe the question is, can you consume this for, make it a target for VCAC or VCD or something? Absolutely. You can, because this is just standard vSphere, right? It's just vSphere and ESX and LogInsight and vSAN. So you can make this a target for VCAC. You could, if you wanted to, you could just wipe the entire thing and use it however you like, but then you're just buying the hardware, right? And the software bundle is pretty expensive. So you might as well just buy the hardware and roll your own if you're going to do that. But the point of Evo Rail is that it's an appliance model, it's plug and play. If you want to do that, you can absolutely do that. It's your prerogative.
Okay, but in this case, what happens with the vCloud agent when you are doing upgrade of ES6?
I don't have an answer for that because we've not built it to be that model, right? So I don't know. I got no answer for that one. Sorry. Anyone else? I think we're almost done. No? Oh, yes.
See, even though we have 4 nodes on one a single appliance, is that a single point of failure? If there is anything happens to the appliance, if I need to change the board or anything like that, I need a downtime, right?
So the question is, if you need to replace anything, is that
on the appliance?
Yeah. So again, you call your QEP or your provider, whether that be Dell, Fujitsu, EMC, HP, and we've actually got a process inside the Evo Rail engine. So if you take out a node, let's say like the procs fail or the RAM goes or something, the QEP will come out, or a service technician will come out, rip out the node, put in a new one. There has some things that has to be done to that node to make it work with the Evo Rail engine. We have to stamp the BIOS with an ID that allows that host to know that it's part of an Evo Rail appliance and which appliance is part of inside a cluster. But it's simple as soon as you plug that node back in, the UI will say, oh, you've replaced the node. Do you want me to add it back into the VC cluster for you? Yes or no? If you click no, you'd have to go and do it manually. But if you click yes, it'll re-add it back into VC, configure it up, set all the networking up, and it's good to go.
Thank you.
Do you have a alert kind of monitoring in that if any hardware failure happens?
So the monitoring, we have basic hardware monitoring as you saw on the UIs. It monitors disks, networking, CPU, memory, storage, things like that. Real bare bones basic stuff. If you wanted to install VCOps, you're more than welcome to. Again, you can just throw it in as a virtual appliance, connect it up to VC. It'll work just as it always has done. But we wanted to get the basics right and have basic health monitoring in there.
How do you boot the EXXI host? Do you use a SD card or a USB?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
How you boot the EXXI for those 4 nodes?
How do you boot the agent? Sorry, I'm not...
How you deploy the EXXI?
Oh, so it comes from the factory already installed. The appliance comes with everything you need already on the box. There's no need to install any software, set anything up. It's literally turn it on and ESX is running. But ESX is not configured, so it has no IP addresses, no networking, nothing like that. But there's no install required. It's ready to go. Yes, sir.
Do you have specific use cases or limits on use cases? I remember with vSAN previously, there was talk of maybe using it for management clusters, VDI, DMZs, things like that. Are there certain things we should be using for this and things that maybe we should be avoiding?
So vSAN is typically right now is generally seen as a tier 2, tier 3 service provider, right? It's not tier 1 right now because it's still version 1. So it's for running things like Exchange and VDI, but you wouldn't be running like big databases or anything like that on it. So it's a tier 2, tier 3 level appliance. If that answers your question. Yes, sir.
What about the life cycle? What will happen when V6?
So we're actually building complete upgrade paths. So when V6 is released, you won't be able to install this yourself because, again, it comes from the QEP. And what we're doing is we're running behind our main releases because what we don't want to do is put 6 out and then 2 days later have U1 and then U2 and U3 patch and patch and patch and patch and patch. So we're going to run about 5 to 6 months behind. So when U1 is available and all those early bugs have been squashed, you'll be able to do the offline update like you saw in the UI, and it'll be a seamless path. You won't have to worry about getting dirty with anything. Anyone else? I think we're done. Well, thank you very much for your time, everyone. It's been great.